Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Our guest today is Carl Honoré, the author of In Praise of Slow. He's one of those guys that lives a slow life, but he's very successful. So if you find yourself in the same situation when you don't have time for anything, but you still want to be successful, you might want to listen to what he's saying. Carl, welcome to the interview slash podcast and welcome to Bucharest.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So I've been listening to your books, listening and reading. I've been trying to optimize time. Something you double dose, yes. And I've been listening to the how do you say it in English? The slow book.
In Praise of Slow in English.
In Praise of Slow, exactly. I'm listening to this on Audible, and I'm listening to 1.5x.
Oh no, the shame.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to optimize listening to a book on slow living. Why do you think I'm doing that? Could you help?
Get out the psychiatrist's couch. Well, I suppose that reflects the world we live in now, isn't it? We're obsessed with cramming more and more into less and less time. And every moment of the day, for many of us, feels like a race against the clock. And we just think, how can I do this better? I'll speed it up. So everything from reading books to making love to eating to working, we try and accelerate it. And I think we often do that without even thinking hard about the effect. So often when we go too fast, we do the thing less well, but somehow we just carry on going fast because that's the way the culture has indoctrinated us, I think.
Yeah, take it slow. It's easy to say, and it's very hard to live by. So we get that too in Romania. For the, let's say, our parents and our grandparents have been living slow lives, but we've been accelerating since the revolution in Romania when we put down communism, so we thought. We started accelerating and we kept on accelerating, and now we have a new generation of workaholics, people that go into burnout, depression, and some of those even go into downshifting or the slow living. So we're there. It's a common theme among all civilized countries. You have more experience on that. You've been writing the slow book and you released it in 2004. So it's been already an issue for you then. In 2004, I just realized I was starting accelerating, and I've been accelerating ever since. What's been changing in the meanwhile? How is your life been changing?
My personal life.
And your experience on that. What do you see happening in the world?
Well, I think in the 15 years since In Praise of Slow came out, two things have happened. On one side, there has been a general acceleration of the culture. Still, the main keynote of modern society it remains speed, I think. You know, there was very little social media, for instance, around when I wrote that book. And social media is one of the accelerants, right? It's one of the things that speeds us up or helps us go faster. But at the same time, as the world has got faster over these last 15 years, that countercurrent for slow, for saying, okay, some things should be fast, and often faster is better, but not always. And I think I've seen this explosion of slow thinking across all fields of human endeavor. So in any walk of life now, whether it's the workplace, technology, the bedroom, anything, people are bringing the lens of slow and saying, yeah, sometimes fast is good, but other times I want to do this thing better by slowing down. And I feel now, looking back, I'm just blown away by how far the slow movement has come. If you'd said to me when the book first came out all those years ago that the slow movement would be where it is today, I just would have thought you were smoking something vaguely illegal.
You're talking about a slow movement. So we have a movement of people trying to slow things down. And we've seen that as a response to the very fast pace of life. Everything is becoming fast, but also agitated. We're becoming nervous about everything that's anxious. So that's happening a lot. So the slow movement, it's a response to all that.
It is very much. I mean, we are now, as a society, bumping up against the limits of what the human body, mind, and spirit can take in terms of speed. We are not built to go as fast as many of us are going, which is why we're suffering from, an epidemic of mental health problems, people burning out, as you say. We've, in a sense, a kind of metaphysical, existential sense of waste, in the sense that we are racing through our lives instead of living them. We're just skimming the surface. Our lives become these endless to-do lists. We get to the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the year, and we look back and think, whew, I can't even remember what I did because I did it so fast.
We all do that.
Well, I don't do that anymore.
So how is your week been so far?
Well, my week, this is one of the paradoxes of slow. People think that to slow down, you've got to move out of Bucharest, or I live in London, leave London and go live in a cottage in the woods and grow organic carrots, right? They think that's what slow living means. And that's one version of slow. It's not the only version. To me, slow is a mindset. It's a chip that you slip into your mind. And it's very simple. You arrive at each moment trying to do the thing not as fast as possible, but as well as possible. You know, the right speed, what musicians call the tempo giusto. And if you bring that approach to every single thing you do, you're going to do it better and enjoy it more. So I'm now on a book tour of Romania. Anyone looking at my schedule would think, well, he's a 10-carat hypocrite because he's not slow. But what matters is how I live those moments. So I'm going through a busy schedule, but I don't feel rushed. I don't feel agitated. I don't wear a watch. I'm not looking at the clock. I'm enjoying every moment of it, which is a kind of qualitative shift in my experience.
Let me take this one off then. I'm not well equipped for this interview.
That's your first step towards finding your inner tortoise, right? It's taking one eye off the clock.
So, clock off. What's next? So no smartwatches for you?
No smartwatches. I have a smartphone though, which I carry around, and I use that little red button off. Do you remember it?
You turn a smartphone off.
My two favorite words these days are airplane mode, right? And I love my iPhone, right? But I don't want to be enslaved to it. So I'm on it when I need to be on it, and then when I don't need to be, I switch off. So that's what the essence of this slow revolution is about relearning the lost art of shifting gears. Sometimes I'm fast, sometimes I'm connected to the grid, and
like
I'm using
now,
the speed of software.
I can see you. You're very well connected. We're having a very fast-paced conversation. You're here.
I'm here. I'm completely here. I'm not thinking about my to-do list. My phone is not in my pocket vibrating. I'm completely here with you now. But as you say, I talk fast. I move fast. I'm a naturally fast person. I've got a lot of type A tendencies. I play ice hockey in my spare time. I love speed, right? But I'm not a fundamentalist or an extremist of slowness. I love speed. Faster is often better, but not always, right? And that's the key here. It's about saying, sure, when am I going to go fast? When am I going to go slow? I'll give you an example recently that shows how the tectonic plates are shifting in our culture. A little while ago, The Economist magazine did a big survey looking at the pace and speed in the modern workplace. And they came to a conclusion that is in fact a perfect summation of this slow philosophy. The final two lines of that survey from The Economist were, forget frantic acceleration. Mastering the clock of business means choosing when to be fast and when to be slow. And that's The Economist. It's not Buddhist Monthly or Acupuncture Weekly.
Come on.
It's the in-house Bible of the type A ambitious people who are understanding that slowness has a role to play in the 21st century, even in the workplace.
Not necessarily. I beg to differ. I think it leaves way for the workaholics to keep on saying, yeah, but the time is now. The time is now all the time. I need to be fast, be quick, act upon the opportunities that happen right now. And right now, it's all the time. So if I go slow and I delay a trade or, a company buying a startup or launching a new technology or releasing the next update on the iPhone or I don't know what app, I would be too slow. So if I don't publish my videos tonight, the YouTube algorithm or the Google AI is gonna rank me lower.
There is good slow and bad slow, right? Bad slow is getting your YouTube broadcast out too late, right? Or releasing your app after it's, the market has moved on, of course. I'm not saying that everything must be slow, but if in order to get your YouTube broadcast out in good shape, in order to put that next iteration of your app online in fighting form, you need to have had some moments of slowness before so you can be creative, so you can make sure you haven't made terrible mistakes, so that you can connect with your audience and so on. So the idea is not to do everything slowly. That's, in a way, what I've been fighting against, this taboo against the very idea of slowness, that slow is synonymous in our culture with all those things you hinted at there, lazy, unproductive, late, boring, stupid, right? And I think people hear the word slow and alarm bells go off in their head. They think, oh no, if I slow down at all, ever, I'm going to miss all my deadlines. My partner will leave me. My friends will think I'm boring, and I'll end up sleeping under a bridge in Bucharest. That's not what slow is, right? When you slow down the way the economist is suggesting, or the way I'm suggesting, you choose your moments to be fast. You then choose other moments to be slow, and you move back and forth. It's when you move back and forth between fast and slow, that's when the music and the magic happen in every walk of life.
Learning that music, that tune, it's very difficult. Knowing how to shift from fast to slow is key. Mastering that is very, very hard. I recently started to downshift a little, let's say, slow down a little after many years of being a journalist, always being in the front line, working every single day as hard as I could, putting in, I don't know, close to 90, 100 hours per week. So in our culture, and it's Romania too, when you work a lot and you're exhausted, when you tell your friends you're exhausted, it's like, look at me, how cool, I'm so cool. So even though I know it's bad for me, I still sometimes think I shouldn't say people that I'm overworked because they will think it's a cool thing to do. So it got into our culture that being tired, being exhausted by what you do shows how well you're performing.
Exactly. That's the flip side of this taboo against slowing down, is that we have elevated speed and busyness. We put it on a pedestal, right? It's become a badge of honor to say, I'm busy, or I'm exhausted because I was up all night finishing this project, or I did a 95-hour week. And I think that's part of the problem, is that the culture has been so infected by this virus, this idea that somehow faster, more, busier is better, is a hard thing to break out of, especially when it's woven into our vernacular. I don't know if it's the same here in Romania, but in Britain, where I live, or in the English-speaking world, if you meet someone in the street and you say, how are you doing? They say, busy. And they don't even say, it's just busy. And if you don't say you're busy, somehow you're a failure, or you're not important enough because you're not busy. Busy. You're always sort of busy. You're always doing more and more things.
Romanians say, I'm good.
Oh, okay, well, that's already a little bit more human than being busy, right? Because people live in the English-speaking world, it's all about busy. But as I say, that is the enemy that we're fighting against. It's not invincible, this culture. And I think now we're getting to a point where more and more people are saying, enough. This is ludicrous. Every moment of my life is a dash to the finish line that I never reach. I'm suffering at work. I'm making mistakes. I'm not as creative as I could be. At home, I'm not able to connect or be fully present with my partner, my children. I'm not enjoying my food. Memory is gone. I mean, this is another thing. I mean, Milan Kundera the novelist talks about the intimate bond between slowness and memory. And there's something about that. I think people, when they start to slow down, I notice this myself, when you're moving so fast, nothing sticks. Everything is a blur. And your head hits the pillow on December 31st. You look back and think, whoa.
What?
That was 2018? I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night, right?
Exactly.
When you slow down and do one thing at a time and give each moment your full attention, and you're doing that slow thing of trying to do the thing as well as possible instead of fast as possible, things stick. You have a memory bank of things to look back on. And let's be honest, that's one of the great joys of being a human being. That's what fuels a lot of our happiness, is looking back on our memories, tapping back into those old stories that we tell ourselves, retell, reshape. We're always respinning our past. If you haven't got memories, what are you? You're just wandering around you're a vessel for busyness and nothing more.
So you're defining the problem now. You're defining the issue. Let's go into the how. How do we change it? How do we go from stopping being so fast and not remembering anything, but doing everything, trying not to miss out on opportunities, and trying to impress, trying to be efficient, productive, profitable, going into being better? How do you make that shift? Where does it start?
Gosh, there's so many places you can start. One of the places many people start, and where I started, was just simply doing less. Right? I was chronically trying to do way too many things. I mean, my to-do list was
What was the first thing you stopped doing?
Well, what I did was I started putting a to-do list together for a day and making sure I dropped one thing per day. Just simply, whatever the day was, I got rid of one thing. I would look down the list and choose the least important thing and drop it. And
Like
I
what?
used to feel, well, it could be It might be a business lunch. It might be a party, a social event. It might be, a reading. It could be anything. It depends on the day, right? And I found, at first, it seemed to me that how am I ever going to do this? Because I thought, I can't do less. I need more time to do more. But I think the problem is that we've wound ourselves up into such a hysterical state now that we're constantly doing things that aren't that important. Most of the stuff we do is just filler. We're so afraid, we're terrified of dead time and empty time and not doing anything. It's become such a horrible sin to commit in the 21st century. But actually we need that empty time, right? To process the things we did before that were important, to make sense of them, to rest and recharge and reflect. So I found that doing less was important. And it was alongside having a to-do list, I created a not to-do list, which helped me with FOMO.
Okay.
So I would take something that today I thought, oh no, I'm going to miss out on something really important, but I'm going to do it anyway to slow down. So I put it on my not to-do list. Then 6 weeks later, I'd look at the not to-do list and see the thing that 6 weeks before seemed to me essential. I have to do this thing. I couldn't even remember it 6 weeks from now. And I think giving yourself that time perspective where you look back, in the moment, we feel like we can't let anything go. We have to do everything that comes our way. Later on, when you look back at that day, you realize actually, of the 12 things you did that day, maybe one of them was genuinely important. The others, seeing the big picture could easily have just fallen by the wayside. And my book in English is called In Praise of Slow. I often think it could be entitled In Praise of No. Just simply saying no, right? We've lost the art of saying no. We're just obsessively saying yes to everything. And no, you say no to externals, things in the world around you. What you're doing is saying yes to yourself, right? Giving yourself that space and time. A quote from Warren Buffett, legendary American investor, who said once, the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything, right?
Okay.
And it served him pretty well.
But the same guy made a few hundred millions while taking a bath.
He probably took more baths than the people who didn't make a few hundred million, right? Because it's taking those baths. It's in those moments when you let the mind wander.
Okay.
You get away from the coal face. I mean, this is all throughout human history. Artists, scientists have always understood that the human brain cannot sit back and absorb and process and be creative without moments of slowness. It's just, and we know that now with brain scans and so on, we know that when people are in a relaxed, unhurried state, the brain shifts into a richer, more nuanced, more creative mode of thought that psychologists call slow thinking. The clue is right there in the title, right?
Exactly.
And we all know that. I mean, just let me even ask you, as someone who clearly leads a fairly accelerated life, when do your best ideas come to you?
After a long vacation.
Yeah. Or, I ask that question whenever I do events around the world. The number one answer is in the shower, right?
Or in the shower.
No one ever says my best ideas come to me when I'm juggling 45 emails or I'm racing to meet a deadline with a boss or a client breathing down my neck. They come to me when I'm on vacation, in a hammock, in the shower, walking the dog. Because it's in those slow moments that we shift into something deeper, something more creative. And that's where I'm talking about this kind of gear shifting, right?
Okay.
Sometimes you're fast, sometimes you've got to be on it, get that deadline, get it over the line, all those kind of macho terms from the fast world of business. But in order to do the fast, macho, testosterone stuff, you need to have those slow moments. You need the long vacation. You need the shower.
Of
you
course.
need to soak in the bath.
In your books, you also talk about how much our working routine put us into workaholics. The Americans take less vacations than anyone else. They put in longer hours. They come to work even when they're sick. And that's statistics for the US, but I think it's the same for Romania. I can't remember when I took a sick leave. I can't remember whenever I used all my vacation days. I still have leftovers from the years past. There's some people that even go into putting in vacation days but coming to work to keep the deadline.
Yeah.
So I think you've heard about this. But coming into the present day, I'm trying to slow down. And I'm seeing also in my child the tendency to fill the time with anything, with everything, with technology, the iPad, the YouTube. Let's do something, let's play, let's do. And I sometimes tell my child, no, let's get bored. Let's just sit there and let's get bored. And she becomes angry at me because why should I be bored? Because when you're bored, you might get some ideas. How do we teach people how to get bored without getting them angry?
Well, boredom is so important. I'm so glad you said that because, especially with children, I mean, I do a lot of work with kids in schools and families and so on. And, throughout human history, when a child was bored and came to a parent and said, I'm bored, that was the child's problem, right? You would say, the mom and father would say, go outside, find a friend, or they would use that expression, use your imagination. Now a child comes and says, I'm bored, and the parent freaks out, says, oh no, my child's bored, I'm failing. Where's the iPad? We need another extracurricular.
Let's put in some piano, some ballet.
Exactly. No, you need the boredom to happen because it's precisely in those moments of unstructured time, of not being quite sure what's coming next, of being off the clock, that restless feeling that comes with boredom. That's when you light up inside. That's when the creative juices and fireworks begin to go, not just for children, but for all of us. And I think as the work I do with kids, is a lot of that word boredom comes up more and more now. Schools talking about, there's schools that are offering National Boredom Day or having boredom weeks and
really?
to try to bring back this idea of not being constantly stimulated, just to get away from that barrage of never-ending distraction so that you can have, Virginia Woolf has that phrase, talking about children specifically, the novelist Virginia Woolf talked about the great cathedral space of childhood, that sense of capaciousness and endless horizons where sometimes things aren't happening. You're just there. And it's in those moments, as you were saying, that's when the child has to build their own devices up, come up with their own arsenal of creativity and things. And I think your question was, how do we do it? I think we do it in small steps. If a child has been accustomed to constant distraction, you can't just say one day, that's it, pull the plug, off you go. You've got to do little steps. So you say, okay, half an hour, let's sit down.
I got some friends, they do that with their kids. And at some point, let's say, okay, tablets off, smartphone off, everybody go outside.
Yeah.
That's like an off lever.
I think that's one way to do it. I wouldn't do that for the whole month, but maybe sort of Sunday morning, today, this week, we're all off screens, and let's see what happens. Let's go into it as a family with no plan. Let's just see how it flows, and then build up from there. And you start to have every day you've got an hour when the whole family is off, or whoever is in the household is off the screen.
Yes.
I think you need to go slowly. This is one of the ironies. We're also impatient now that we even want to slow down fast. So people hear the idea of slowing down and disconnecting. They say, okay, let's just pull the plug and stop. We're addicted to these things. We're addicted to busyness. So any addict, to bring an addict away from addiction, they're going to have withdrawal symptoms.
So
and
that's
it's a
addiction.
process.
We need to address that because it's addiction. Whenever we say we go slow, we relax, and we take some time off, we usually go into a different addiction that we call relaxation. Like even gaming can be that. Mm-hmm. So there's studies that show, okay, half an hour of gaming a day can prolong your life, make you a little less miserable, little happier. Kids get, better reflexes. But going beyond that half hour goes into addiction. So whenever you say, I'm going to slow down and start playing video games, is that going to work?
Yeah, well, again, it's as you say, it's how you do it, right? It's the difference between playing half an hour of video games and sometimes sitting down on the sofa, and then you're there 5 hours later. You think, well, what happened to Saturday, right? Because you've lost all that time on the. And I think that's where the problem is. It's the lack of awareness about when to switch on and make the most of all this incredible technology, which is just a cornucopia of joy. I mean, I love the tech. And when to switch off, right?
It's the same with movies. So you're binging on movies for the night, and then you go to bed at 3 a.m., and then you wake up the next day, oh my God, what did I do last night? I've been binging on that. Okay, now I caught up with the Game of Thrones. Is that any good?
No, I would argue no. Simply, I think if you're the occasional binge, that's fine, right? But I think if your model for consuming media is binging, then, the word itself tells the whole story, doesn't it? It's like binging on alcohol or binging on food. It's not a good thing. Sometimes you go out for a big night and have a lot of drinks and have a sore head the next day. That's fine. But if you're doing that every night, that's not so fine, right? And I think there's a parallel there with the tech. Sometimes you're going to just let rip and watch a whole series that drops, on Netflix. But that shouldn't be the paradigm for the way you approach all media. It's got to be about finding that balance and sometimes saying enough, right? And the thing about binging is it's like any form of excess speed. It becomes a very superficial experience. How much of that Game of Thrones episode 9 do you remember if you watched 7 episodes last night and it was wedged between 8. I mean, this is the thing. It's coming back to that question of memory again. I think one of the things we sacrifice on the altar of speed is memory. It's taking away that memory of the thing, right? Which is as important, maybe even more important than the moment of consumption. It's what we do with it afterwards. And if you've consumed at high speed with your attention elsewhere, it's not as nutritional, right? It's not going to stay with you.
You're talking about speed a lot and how speed kills memories, and I agree with that. So one of the common themes in very, very busy cities, Bucharest is one of those. Cluj is having one of the second largest city now in Romania, has the same issue, traffic. Traffic is becoming so busy and everybody is in a rush. And we all do that. So we get into the traffic and we're so entrenched. We are cringing. We are so bad at it. But when you go outside the city, it becomes very slow. Everybody's driving slower. They're not in a rush. Whenever they get close to Bucharest, coming into the city, they accelerate. So the average speed inside the city on the last leg of a journey when you come into Bucharest is actually faster than the previous 100 kilometers.
Until you bump into traffic, though, right?
Yes.
Because that's, of course, the paradox of speed and with cars is that the car promises endless speed and autonomy. Your foot goes down and the speed goes up, which works on an empty highway outside Cluj, but it's not going to work in downtown Bucharest. I've been driving around today, and I tell you, the traffic in this city is bad, slow par excellence, right?
Today? No, it's vacation.
Oh, it's even worse, is it otherwise?
Oh, you should come back here. On a wet day. If you get here back in here on a wet day, you'd see much worse. So why do we tend to press the accelerator more when things get even busier? We go into that, I don't know, like an override, like an overburn.
I think there's probably a chemical reason here. There's probably something to do with adrenaline rush, fight and flight. There's, especially in a big city where it feels gladiatorial almost, traffic. And you see other people going very fast when a traffic opens up. And I think we just get contaminated by that same rush. And it becomes a battle of wills or a battle of survival, right? And so many of our battles are defined these days by speed. It's funny, we've got a lot of elections going on, and there's in the United States at the moment, and in Britain for the new prime minister and so on. And I noticed that in the language, it's described as a race. The race to be the next prime minister, the race to be the next American. It's not a race. It's nothing to do with time. A race measures who gets from A to B fastest. We are all going to get to the election day at the same time. Whoever wins the prime minister presidential role will win it at the same time. It has nothing to do with speed. It's more of a contest. Yet we somehow spin that round, and I think it's part of this kind of worship of speed culture that our measuring stick for success, for winners, is speed. Even when speed isn't even part of it, right? We call it a race. It's not a race. And I think that sort of shows a little, just like driving in a city should not be a race, right? But it kind of becomes one.
Tell that to our colleague. He's a champion in hill climb. So speed for him is the essence of that sport. So who's first at the top of the hill wins the race.
Well, that's a real race then, yeah. I wouldn't call that a contest, right? But I mean, even someone who does that kind of exercise, this is something you discover when you talk to any elite athlete, is that there's going to be fast and there's going to be slow. The top athletes understand that. They know they have got to recharge, recover from injury, rest, so that they can be fast when they need to be fast, right? So it's a good metaphor there.
He's actually slow in the city, my colleague. He's a champion on the hill climb, but very slow in the city.
There you go. He's a wise man. And he'll live long.
So, yeah, go Marian.
And conquer.
But now he's going to get a little slower because whenever you have kids, you slow down, you take some time off. And there's, I've been listening on a BBC documentary saying that men that have daughters tend to slow down even more and have longer, more healthy lives compared to men that don't have children or have boys. Because whenever you get a girl, girls are a little slower and you tend to be more protective and you slow down. I'm not sure if I'm slowing down because I want to slow down or because I have a daughter, but surely I can see myself slowing down. I cannot go on the roof of my house to clean the solar panels because I get, how do you call that, height sickness?
Vertigo.
Vertigo. I didn't have that. So there might also be some medical explanation for slowing down when you have kids.
Yeah.
Maybe you should consider that for your next book.
Well, I certainly, my whole slowing down thing started with children as well, right? Reading bedtime stories and finding myself speed reading Snow White, and my version of Snow White.
Tell me about that.
Well, it was back before I wrote In Praise of Slow, and I was very fast. I was unable to slow down. I go into my son's bedroom at the end of the day, and I became an expert in what I call the multiple page turn technique. Have you ever?
No.
You try and turn 3 or 4 pages to speed up the story.
No, my daughter wouldn't take that.
Well, mine didn't either. We were always fighting. My son would say, "Why are there only 3 dwarves? And where's Grumpy tonight?" And it was just horrendous. And I knew it was wrong because I'd been read to, and I knew that was should be the most intimate, relaxed, magical, tender moment, right? Father-son story. But I just couldn't slow down. And the wake-up call came when I caught myself thinking of buying a book I'd heard about called The 1 Minute Bedtime Story, right? Yeah. So Snow White in 60 seconds. And I thought, bring it on, right? Amazon drone delivery. But then, light bulb overhead. And I thought, no, am I really in such a hurry I'm ready to fob off my boy with a soundbite instead of a story? And I didn't buy that book. And I started reading every word of the book. And that's when I kind of started the whole slowing down thing. And I do think for many of us, it is an encounter with children, often our own children. Because children, of course, they're not rushed. They are, or young children especially, because the whole point of this slow philosophy is getting away from the tyranny of the clock and living in harmony with your own metronome, your own tempo. And anyone who's got small children knows that they don't understand time. You say,
and they don't respect it.
They don't respect. You say you've got 5 minutes, and they think, what does that even mean, right?
Let's go. We're gonna be late.
What is exactly? They're saying I'm playing here, or I'm talking, or no, yeah. So they don't. So I think when we come from our hyper-obsessed world about time and counting every second and smartwatches and counting our steps and everything's metrics, right? Everything's been counted to optimize it, to speed it up, to do more and more. And suddenly you collide with a small human being who's got nothing to do with that, who totally doesn't get it. That can often set off some sparks and I think get us looking at our own selves and realizing how absurd we've become when we're counting every single minute instead of living it. I remember actually with my own son, the first phrase that he learned when he started speaking, the first phrase he learned was, "Hurry up." And I thought, when he said that, I thought, well, oh dear, I wonder where he learned that. I didn't have to wonder very long.
Hurry up.
Thankfully I changed though, but that was the bad old me.
Now my daughter gets mindfulness classes in her school. I hear that there's more and more schools offering mindfulness classes to kids, something I didn't get in my schooling. So I'm seeing a trend forming. You've been talking about this in your books. It's becoming a trend into getting slower and slower. More and more Europeans go slow with food, with everything they do. But now we need to teach our children how to pay attention to their bodies, to their minds, to everything. How do we teach the grown-ups? Okay, we say we can learn from the kids. I'm learning from my daughter. I'm trying to help her also get bored or creative. I'm not always doing the greatest job because I'm fidgeting, like the fidget spinners.
Yeah. I've been there. I know how that is. Yeah.
So fidget spinners originally are not a toy, are a medical device, but got into our culture as toys because we are all fidgeting.
We're all fidgeting. That's right. Yeah.
So how do we do with all the fidgeting? How do we do away with that?
Well, I think mindfulness is something that not only children are doing now. It's not surprising that there's a whole mindful revolution sweeping through the workplace, right? From Silicon Valley to Wall Street to companies in Romania where people are encouraged to do mindful practice or meditation and so on because it has a clear and beneficial effect on human beings, right? It lowers stress, focuses attention, all those good things.
We should do mindfulness?
Mindfulness. And I often think of, when I talk about what does slow mean to me, slow with a capital S, it's partly being mindful, being present and in the moment. So mindfulness is one thing. And then I think any other kind of slow ritual, something that just defies the cult of speed. So yoga is very good. I do yoga. I'm a big hockey, fast sport guy, play squash. I do yoga as well.
You do yoga.
I know, yeah. I'm not very good at it, but it slows me down, right? It's helpful for me as someone who normally in my sports is very about fast. I have an incredibly slow time with yoga, and I've got to focus on my body, which is not nearly as flexible as all the women in the class, right? So it's also a bit of a...
How many men?
I'm the only man in my class. Yeah,
I knew that.
Okay, so let's put yoga to one side.
No, I went to Pilates and I get you know the face from the instructor, the trainer, when they see a man in yoga or Pilates. Are you
What's
one
going
of
on
the
here?
freaks? Are you here looking into yoga pants? Are you into yoga or yoga pants? So men, we need to go fast. We go fast, but we don't know how to go slow.
Well, I think part of that problem is that slowness is got caught up in our culture and associated with femininity and women, and speed is caught up with macho and testosterone and manliness somehow. So that makes it hard for men to go to that yoga class, right, or to do Pilates. But more and more men are, right? But I think if you find that a scary thing to do or contemplate as a man, there are other things you can do. Another thing that I do that really helps me slow down is to draw, to sketch. So I have a little book, and I'm terrible. I wouldn't show anyone any of my drawings, but that doesn't matter. I just have a little book, and sometimes I'll be sitting in an airport or in a park or something, and I'll just look at something and draw it. And there's something about that act. It forces you to look hard at things, which is something we very rarely do nowadays. Our eyes are all over the place. We're looking at 3 things at once. I'm looking at this, but I'm thinking of the discipline of sketching, of drawing, is immensely slowing, and you can feel it retraining your body, and I felt it's so helpful for overcoming that fidgeting reflex, because it focuses the mind on the moment. You're looking at all the details, and then you're having to render them through your arm and hand in physical form. So the body's engaged in that slowing down as well. And I think sketching is a wonderful way. It's free. Carry a book, or just grab a piece of paper. Don't have to show it to anybody afterwards. And there are lots of things like that I think that work for people. Reading is another one, not on 1.5% times speed.
No, I'm driving and listening to you, and I'm driving in 1.5.
I'll tell you, reading is a really interesting example, because in Britain, where I live, over the last year or so, sales of poetry have gone up 300%. And the reason for that is that young people, young digital natives, are buying poetry. And they're buying it because poetry is the one form of literature that really slows you down. You can't speed read poetry, because poetry is all about the rhythm and the cadence and the words coming together.
Yeah, but speed reading, I've been trying that last night while reading too fast, in praise of slow. And praise of slow, I try to
speed reading and praise.
Okay. And I can do that.
I saw somebody sent me a link. You know, Blinkist.
Blinkist,
yeah, and said my book is on Blinkist, and it said the ad, with no irony at all. The ad said, "Read in praise of slow in 9 minutes," and I thought, this is either this is an algorithm that wrote it, or it's a human being who's got no sense of irony, right?
Or they have great sense of humor.
They may do. Yeah, I should.
They may do.
But the speed reading is a classic example of what we lose when we go too fast. There's a great Woody Allen joke. He talks about. He says, "I did a speed reading course. We read War and Peace. It's about Russia."
Okay, that works.
That's all he remembers, right? And I think that sort of gets at what we lose.
You know what slows me down a lot? Cooking.
Oh yeah.
When I do pasta, my mind empties. I'm only focused on the dough and all that. I'm making a mess of the kitchen, but I don't know. I'm there. I'm so focused. My mind doesn't wander. So whatever I can do to make my mind not wander seems to work. Cooking, I don't know, mowing the lawn.
Any kind of arts. A lot of people do knitting now, that's another one. But cooking is a perfect one. I love cooking myself, and making homemade pasta is something I've been doing with my children for which kind do you make, ravioli or?
No, I just do the normal, the pasta.
Like spaghetti or linguine or something, or? Tagliatelle, right, yeah, a classic, yeah.
The classic.
Yeah. We do a lot of, I've always done with my children, ravioli, and a lot of their friends come around, and these are kids from the digital generation. They don't go near their phone for 2 hours because they're completely focused on getting the ravioli cut, rolling it out, and it just becomes this almost a form of therapy as we all move away from that fidgetiness. And cooking, I just love, and plus you have a wonderful meal at the end of it, but the act itself is so soothing, and it inoculates you against the virus of hurry.
You're talking a lot about taking time to prepare food and eat food with family and friends, and take time for that, because we are all speed eating now. So sitting down for dinner, even when we don't bring devices to the table, takes very little time.
It does. You do. I mean, people talk about slow food, and they think, whoa, that means a 4-hour banquet of homemade delicacies. It doesn't have to mean that. It can mean just a very simple pasta you put together in 10 minutes and just sit around the table and talk, right? Or just be together in silence. Just very simple, free things that actually don't take that much time, but have an immense payoff, right, in the way of slowing people down and reconnecting us with others, of course, as well.
That should be the case. But what I'm seeing now, and it's very concerning, is that I see lots of parents, mostly when you go to, let's say, to a restaurant or a resort, and they put their children in front of a screen when they're eating, because it's the only way they can calm the kid down or keep him quiet while they eat. And nowadays, children are eating like this.
Yeah.
And I've seen a mother force feeding her kid while the kid was watching YouTube. So that cannot be good, isn't it?
That's not good. And I think we all have seen the studies and reports that show that that's not good, right? It's not good for the way you eat. It's not good for children, especially in those early years when they should be developing mental agility, social skills, the ability to look at someone, listen. I mean, the art of listening. We've just forgotten how to listen now. We're just so distracted. Or when we're supposed to be listening, we're just reloading, waiting for the person to be quiet so we can say what we want to say. And, people who work in schools describe this generation, many of them coming through now, lacking some of these basic skills, the ability to sit still and listen, the ability to have a conversation. So much we hear about bullying and all this stuff. I think that probably partly comes down to just children not having enough time to work out how to get along with each other because they're always either on a screen or they're being rushed off to Chinese or tennis lessons, right? They don't get that space and time to explore the world on their own terms, to make mistakes, to investigate, to get to know how to talk to other friends and people.
To play with other children.
To play freely without adults telling them how to play faster and how to play better. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, but I want to switch the dial and make it more optimistic about the culture on the tech side because I see a change already happening. I think that when new technology comes along, like these iPads and things, we always go overboard at the beginning. We go too far.
Exactly.
We need time to work out what the social norms, cultural rules, and protocols that we need to build around the technology to get the most of them. That takes time to do. And at first, with this new technological boom of smartphones and iPads, we're way out on the extreme where, as you say, children sit down at a restaurant, they're on the phone, people are constantly. Now we're pulling it back. And I spend a lot of time in Silicon Valley. I was there recently working with companies and parents and schools. And these are people who are on the cutting edge of this technology, who work in Facebook, Google, and so on. And what are they doing in their own homes? They are not giving their kids iPads, plonking them down in front of screens. They are holding them back as long as possible. They're having rooms where there's no screens permanently. They're having blackout hours when nobody looks at gadgets. One school I went to in Palo Alto had recently banned smartphones in the whole school grounds. Parents are no longer allowed to come into the school with a smartphone when they collect their children. And you know where that idea came from? It was the kids themselves who said to the teachers, we want our parents to switch off their phones and come in and talk to us when they pick us up. So people often say, well, this generation of digital natives, people from 30 and under, are lost to technology. I don't buy it. They're human beings like everyone else.
Exactly.
A child born in Romania today has the same brain, basically, as a child born before Facebook. Right? We haven't had a great leap forward in terms of evolution. What's changed is the childhood they're growing up in. But it means that if they're born more or less with the same, circuitry in their brains, they have the same limits and the same needs and desires. And one of those needs is not to be distracted all the time, to be able to listen, to be able to have those human moments. And I feel really optimistic because not only because of what I see in, say, Silicon Valley on the cutting edge of rethinking tech, but there's a new social ritual, which you see a lot in London now and New York. I don't know if it's come to Romania yet. It's called stacking. Stacking. Now, like the English word stack is like a pile, like you pile. So what young people do, they pile their phones up in the middle. You may have come across it at Starbucks while they're having a coffee. These are sort of 20-somethings. Whoever grabs the phone first to look at Snapchat or
pays the bill.
Pays the bill, right? Which I think is just a beautiful way of saying, we have this moment here now. We'll never have this moment again. Why spoil it by trying to be in several other moments at once?
Okay.
And that's the digital native generation. putting down new
the
rules.
digital native generation, because we went into the digital generation. We've been analog, me and you, and then we became digital. We got the speed, but now the next generation, the digital natives, know what to do with it, know when to say turn it on or off, and slow it down. But I want to push things even further into the future. So if we've been, let's say, magically enchanted by the technology, and now we have children coming in and sorting things out for us, what do you think about the next big thing? I'm very optimistic about the Green New Deal in the US now, where the most powerful supporters of the Green New Deal are children. Children in high schools and even middle schools and stuff like that. So younger people that look at nature, they seem to understand it better than us and ask for rights, not for only for animals, but also for for nature, for plants. So the digital natives are more focused on nature than the people that made that technology available for the digital natives. How do you look at this?
Well, I think in some ways you're right and it's not surprising because human beings, we're animals of nature. Until the last century or so, we essentially lived in nature for most of human history. We lived surrounded by green and fields and so on, and that's what nourishes us. What makes, even now they've got tons of research that shows that going into nature reduces feelings of stress. It has a physical, beneficial effect on us. Even in hospitals where patients are shown a garden and they compare those patients recovering with patients who just see a wall, or the ones who see green recover faster. We are animals of nature.
The 3-day effect, they call it. They take veterans and people that have been going through trauma, they take them into nature for 3 days, no devices, no nothing. 3 days later, their blood pressure and everything is much better.
And in Japan, they have the phrase forest bathing. I don't know if you've come across this.
No.
It's now kind of got out into the Anglosphere, and people talk a lot about forest bathing, which is essentially that. It's going out into a forest and being in nature, simply walking around in the woods and having all of these beneficial effects. And it's become something now, of course, the travel industry is hopping on that bandwagon, and people
forest bathing.
They call it forest bathing, yeah. And it's now something you hear a lot people talking about in the English-speaking world as well. But the fact that the digital natives are all over this is not surprising to me, because they can feel the need as much as anyone else for green, right? For nature.
For green. So if we've been the technological generation, now we have the digital natives. What are we going into? Because I believe that the slow movement that you're a part of is just one step on the way to something else. What could that be?
Well, for me, because of my definition of slow, I feel like slow is the beacon. It's the light that will take us through to the next stage, which is saying, all of this technology that is wonderful, let's make the most of it. But let's understand that it should not fill up all the bandwidth, that it should not expand to occupy every corner of our lives. And so I think this is where we are now. We're in this transitional phase where we went too far with the tech. Now we're realizing that we need a bit more forest bathing. We need a bit more 3-day time in the woods. Now, where does that needle end up in the middle? And that's what's so thrilling to me now, is that we're having these conversations, and we also at the same time have the science. We can look into the brain and the body and gauge and measure and show clearly the benefits of the technology. You were mentioning gaming can be very helpful up to a certain point, and also with nature. And so where are we going to go? I think we'll find somewhere that I would describe as slow, with a capital S, which is we'll live in a world where when it makes sense to be on a screen and using the speed of software, we're right there. Maybe it's even going to be something that we're have in our bodies, or we're carrying or wearing it. It might even be more close to us physically than our smartphones are now. But at the same time, we'll have a whole other culture of knowing when to switch off, right? It's going to be the difference. We're going to be on, off. We're going to lean in. We're going to back off. We're going to be the eye of the tiger or the eye of the storm, right? Fast, slow, coming back to the same thing. And I think that's where we're going to go. And I have a lot of faith in humankind, and I think we will get there. We're going to stumble along the way because it's difficult, but we will get there.
We have a short way to go into artificial intelligence when we're going to go beyond the Turing test. And then we'll be having artificial intelligence and technologies that surpass human intelligence. So do you think that becoming slower, becoming more aware, becoming a better human instead of a better machine will help us go into that new generation of artificial intelligence and technology that can take 95% of everything we do today?
Exactly. I think that we are not going to win the war with machines to do the stuff that machines are good at, right? There's no point fighting that battle. If machines or AI get to the point where they can do, 85, 95% of the things, then we're just going to have, I think, to let them do it. But what we do on the other side of that equation is that we get better at the human stuff, right? And I would describe those two things as being principally creativity and social connection and socializing. Those are the things that so far it seems that machines are going to struggle the most with. Perhaps we'll get to a point where they can even do those as well as us, and I don't know what that world looks like. But until we get to that final stage of the AI revolution, we're going to be in a world where the human USP is going to be creativity and social skills. And those two things rely on slowness, right? Coming back to creativity, you need to slow down to get into that creative mode. And then social connections, that requires slowness. You cannot speed up social relations. No matter how much of a rush you're in, you can't make someone fall in love with you faster because you want to get married in June, right? Just these things have a natural rhythm. We will never have a 1.5 button or 2 button.
There's Tinder for that. You get Tinder for that.
It's true. Yeah, we've got Tinder. That's probably not for getting married, though, not so much in June.
Oh yeah. Romanian women go on Tinder to get married, men for the other thing.
Mm-hmm. That may be the subject for a whole other podcast.
Eventually. So your next book is Bolder. It's something I'm very, very much looking into because modern medicine and modern life is about prolonging your old age, not your youth. So I'm very curious on reading this. I haven't read it yet. But if you can tell me a little more about it, because
Sure.
you're here to launch this Bolder book.
Well, what I'm doing with Bold, I guess what I did with my first books, Praise is Slow, was I took on the cult of speed. What I'm doing with Bolder is I'm taking on the cult of youth. We live in a culture marinated in the idea that younger is always better. That a culture where being older can mean being written off everywhere, from the bedroom to the boardroom. I mean, ageism. Discrimination based on age is now the last form of discrimination that dare speak its name. I mean, sexism, racism, homophobia, we usually call them out when we see them now. People say all kinds of ageist stuff all the time, and it's just water off a duck's back. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg famously stood up a few years ago and said, young people are just smarter. You think, what? A, it's not true, and B, it's offensive to anybody who's not a young person, but nobody, the world just yawned. And what I'm doing with Bolder is I'm saying it's time to stop yawning. It's time to wake up and take down ageism and take down the cult of youth, right?
Okay.
To say that we're entering a golden age of aging. It's never been a better time in human history to grow older. And we have now the technology, the medicine, the knowledge to go on doing amazing things with our minds and bodies deep into later life. And so my argument is we need to move away from this idea that younger is always better, that you have to do everything by the time you're 30, because after 30, it's all downhill, because it's not. Many things stay the same after 30, and many things actually get better, right? Which goes completely against the cultural narrative we're constantly being told. So what I'm trying to say to people is, look, let's redefine what aging is. Let's not feel ashamed, afraid, guilty about growing older, because every age can be a time of discovery, adventure. It depends. It's all about your mindset. It's going to be different. Every chapter of your life, every age will have plus points and negative points. Whether you're 20-something, 30-something, 40, but we can still make the most of every age if we go into it with an open spirit saying, what can I do? How can I define aging for me now in 30-something, 40, 50, 60? Instead of thinking, oh no, I'm 30, I'm too old for this. I'm 40, I'm too old for that. I'm 50, I shouldn't even be thinking. When in fact, this idea of I'm too old for or I'm the wrong age for really, I think, is going out the door now. We're moving into a world where people are less defined and limited by the actual chronological age. What matters now is not how old you are on paper. What matters now is the series you watch on Netflix, the food you cook for the people you love, the art that moves you, the books you read, the kind of sex you have. That's what defines people. That's what will define people more and more, less their birth date. And that to me feels hugely liberating. This is a time of incredible hope for all of us at every age.
So it's like 50s then you're 30?
No,
or
see,
70s then you're 40?
Well, that's what people say, but to me that's ageist. Because
Okay.
70 will always be 70, 50 is still 50, and will always be 50. It's just way better than it used to be, right?
Okay.
And for me, it's kind of, a lot of this is about the language. And for me, that's the kind of language we need to get rid of.
We need to be very paying a lot of attention of how we go into old age. You need to go into old age with a good liver, with some good, let's say, kneecaps,
Yeah.
and some attention.
Yeah, but I mean, my book is not about old age. It's about aging all the way through. So people from their late 20s up to my oldest reader is 94 so far. So it's for all of us, because this is the whole point. We are all aging.
Okay.
And yet we don't feel that way in our culture. We almost think of aging as being something for old people. We talk about, I was reading a newspaper article this morning about football, and it talked about Lionel Messi being an aging star. And you think, well, Lionel Messi was aging when he was 21, right? And yet we use the term aging for people who are old, right? When in
Yes.
fact, if you're 25, 35, we are all aging. And if we approach it with an optimistic spirit, then aging can actually be pretty good. The thing about ageism is that it is the ultimate form of self-harm, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The research shows very clearly that people who fear and feel bad about aging age less well. They're more likely to suffer from cognitive and physical decline. They're more likely to get dementia, and they're even more likely to die younger, right? So what we're doing when we buy into these negative stereotypes about aging is that we're actually making ourselves age worse, right?
Of course.
So all of us can benefit by tearing down the ageist industrial complex and saying, let's rethink this completely. Let's accept that there are things that we lose as we grow older, but also see the other side of that equation, which is that many things will remain the same and others are actually going to get better.
Exactly. And try not to age alone. That's the most important.
Crucial. Absolutely, yeah.
Carl, we need to cut it short because it's already been an hour. I don't know if you've noticed.
I don't wear a watch. I don't know if you've noticed.
So you stopped me from that. I have my colleagues telling me that we need to stop. I would go on and on, but I honestly hope I'll see you again in Bucharest, maybe sometime in the near future.
I hope so too.
It's been a great talk. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm going to encourage all our viewers to check on your books and eventually read some of it and try and do at least 5% of what they read. That would help.
As a starting point.
At the starting point.
Yeah.
Carl, thank you so much again.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this interview, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this interview with your friends. See you for the next one. Bye-bye.